Welcome to another in our series of Kehillat Israel podcasts. This is a recording of Rabbi Amy Bernstein's weekly Friday morning Torah study.
We are in Parashat Ki Tisa this morning, which puts us at Exodus chapter 30, being that we are in the first triennial reading. We begin at the beginning of every Parsha this year and read the first third of every Parsha. Parashat Ki Tisa, we read a lot, actually. We read from Parashat Ki Tisa a lot. Ki Tisa is most known for the incident with the
golden calf.
Golden calf. Technically, the molten calf. Because probably it was not gold. Probably it was gold leaf over wood. Right?
That's how they got it to burn.
Nachon. Right? And a wonderful parallel is that, of course, the Aron HaKodesh, the Ark that's in the Kodesh Kadoshim, is also wood with gold leaf. So you have you miss the power of the juxtaposition of those two things if you think of it as a solid gold cow, right? You miss, the whole point is we have the Aron gilded, and we have wood, with a space in the center gilded with gold, and then we have wood completely filled with itself, gilded with gold, right? And there are the two bookends images that we're dealing with when we're looking at the issue of the molten calf. But we're not going to look at that today. So we are going to look at the first third of the Parsha. So we're going to start at 30:11. If someone would like to begin.
Adonai spoke to Moses, saying, "When you take a census of the Israelite men according to their army enrollment, each shall pay Adonai a ransom for himself on being enrolled, that no plague may come upon them through their being enrolled. This is what everyone who is entered in the record shall pay: a half a shekel by the sanctuary weight, 20 gerahs to the shekel, a half shekel as an offering to Adonai. Everyone who is entered in the records from the age of 20 years up shall give Adonai offering. The rich shall not pay more, and the poor shall not pay less than a half a shekel when giving Adonai offering as expiation for your persons. You shall take the expiation money from the Israelites and assign it to the service of the tent of meeting. It shall serve the Israelites as a reminder before Adonai as expiation for your persons."
All right, thank you. So we are getting here the counting, right, of people, males 20 years old and older. How do we know that?
It says so?
Yes, because it says so. Oh, right, it does say so. Sorry. Because it says so. Yes, it does, doesn't it?
Indisputable. It says so.
But our tip-off is...
in a nutshell.
Our tip-off is the service, right? Military service, right? So these are everybody who would have been eligible for military service. When there is a call for everyone who's eligible to serve in the military to bring a half shekel, what's usually about to happen?
War.
You only do a census like that when there is some kind of need to assess your fighting strength, right? So you put this tax that A, helps you raise money for the war effort, and B, gives you a clearer indication of your fighting force, right? So the census is always, either it's going to be war, or it is a way to figure out how many people you have for the purposes of taxation. In either case, it is a very anxious thing, right? When you have a census, it's generally very anxious in the ancient world. Because it's not good for the people. It means either they're going to go to war, or they're about to have a new tax levied, which usually means the government's broke and things are bad, or they're going to get bad, right? And this is the beginning of all sorts of ways we're going to have to now pay. So, I mean, like Solomon heavily taxed the people with the building of the temple. Heavily taxed them. And the nation state collapsed. After Solomon, the nation state collapses. And we have northern Israel and we have Judah. They are never again united. So, I mean, by, like independently now, a nation state, again, the north and south together. So people had every right reason to be anxious in the ancient world when there's a census. And so whenever we see a census, it's like whoop, whoop, right? Like alarm, alarm, alarm. And in the Torah text, it is considered chutzpahdik to take a census unless it is ordered. So in Torah, God always orders the census to be taken. And when David does it, it is a very serious. Right.
It says when you, though. It doesn't say you shall or you will. It says when you.
Right, because the money that get, not the money, but the actual weight, these are not coins, right? This is a weight of silver is going to be collected. These are all the instructions. Later, we're going to see it implemented.
Right.
Because it's going to be used to build the Mishkan.
Right. I'm just wondering where the imminence is. How is war imminent if it's a when?
War isn't imminent, right? So taking a census is usually an indicator that something bad is about to happen. So there's all this anxiety whenever, I was just trying to give a background of, it's not just like for us taking a census and someone comes to your door with a notebook and asks you what's your age and what's your occupation. It is usually terribly anxiety provoking. Okay. And in Torah, even more so, that it is God who has to order a census to be taken. And it's not happening here, right? This is the instruction, like Julie points out. This is the instruction for when it's going to happen later when the Mishkan is built. You're going to take Moses, a census of the people, and you're going to get this half shekel weight of silver from each of them so that it can be melted down to make anybody know what it's going to make? The sockets. The sockets that hold all of the boards together.
How much was a half a shekel? What was that, a great deal of money or a small amount of money?
I don't know. It doesn't seem.
It says the poor and the rich.
It doesn't seem extravagant because the poor can give it.
Yeah. Okay.
Right. If the poor can give it, it seems to suggest.
But I was just wondering if the poor didn't enter the army then.
There is no army here.
Okay.
This is not a census for battle.
Okay.
Often it would have been, but you were going anyway. Whether you were poor or wealthy, you were going.
Amy, what's a socket? What do you mean a socket? What's that?
So if you think about the Mishkan, the actual structure is planks of wood that were leafed in gold, right? More wood leafed in gold, and they're not going to stand up by themselves. They have to be held together, attached to each other by something. So
Did you say soffit?
Socket.
Sockets.
Socket, whatever it is. I mean, it's the same.
Soffit is what holds together like a
socket.
A socket.
It's a socket that something goes into.
A hole in it is a socket that some kind of a rod goes into.
I think like nuts.
Okay.
Yeah, so it's part of the putting
So
together mechanism.
So that each plank, according to the Torah text, so that each plank is attached to its sister. So the men are going to bring half shekel of silver so that each plank can be attached to its sister. Very interesting.
But you don't know that until later.
Right, until we see. I mean, we're getting all of the instructions.
Was there anything in the past that, like the previous parsha, that would give a clue that that God is going to do something here, or?
Well, we're getting all the instructions about building the Mishkan. We're getting the instructions of the garments for the priests. We're getting the instructions for how to consecrate everything and how to consecrate the priests. And now we're going to get some interesting stuff about the laver and the incense altar.
So it's a continuation.
Yeah, we're in the middle of all of these instructions. And just, here's another one. You're going to take when it's time, you're going to take a census of the people with half a shekel of silver from males 20 years old and up. The reason I want to give you this sense of how dreadful it is because you can see the language. Where do we usually see this language, this shoresh of kaf, pei, resh?
Yom Kippur.
Yom Kippur, kapara. Why is that here? What? I mean, kapara is...
Redeeming themselves, or
Yeah, expiation.
Expiation. It's like it's like you're going to give the half shekel so that something doesn't happen to you, is the sense of kippur here, right? It takes the place of what should happen to you.
Where is Kippur?
So in
16.
verse 12, when you take a census
there
of
it
the
is.
Israelite people according to their enrollment, each shall pay, right? Adonai a ransom. Kofer is the first place we see it in this parsha, right? Kofer nafsho. So
Third line.
Kapara, if you will, right? For their nefesh, for themselves, right? So that no plague may come upon them through their being enrolled. Because you're not supposed to count, right? Only God can order the count, or something really, really bad is going to happen.
In Yiddish, kapora is a sacrifice.
Yes and no. It is a kind of sacrifice, but the sacrifice is achieving kapara. The sacrifice is the zevach, right? There are other words for the sacrifice. Kapara is what the sacrifice achieves, right? That's what giving this half shekel is going to do, which is, and it's totally exactly connected to what sacrifice does, is kapara. It effects an expiation, meaning something comes off of you and goes on it. The other PhD topic I'm going to do someday is this word. Like, it's a very interesting word, and it's a very interesting evolution of the term to where we are at atonement, right? We talk about the Day of Atonement, like that's so clear. Yom Kippur, Yom HaKippurim. It's so clear that it's about at-one-ment. It's like, sorta, right? It has this very intense and rich history underneath all of that. That's kind of
paying to keep yourself safe.
Of somehow shifting something off of you that you otherwise can't shift, because it's just what it is.
It's fear-based. I mean, it's a little fear-based.
Very superstitious.
Yeah.
Also be thought of as insurance, in terms of
indemnity. right, I'm going to get this over, and it's off of me, right? But there's a way that, boy, don't you wish?
Well,
Don't you wish
me
we
of
had that?
The ritual that you've described with the baby that people would do.
Pidyon Haben, the redemption of the first
What
one.
about the ritual shlog and kaporis? Did that fit in there?
Shep and Kapporis, 100%. Because what do you do when you Shep Kapporis? You put, if the person's not there, you put their clothes on the bed. But if the person's there, what do?
I don't know.
You take a chicken, a live chicken,
Yes, I
you
know
swing
that.
it over the head of the
But
person,
why?
and then you snap its neck.
That's lovely.
How is that kapara? That's kapara. That is expiation. That somehow, you take this live thing and you designate that it is now taking upon itself whatever should have happened to this person, and now, and then you have dinner. You put it in a pot and you have
I have a
dinner.
question. The tabernacle, that's not the Aron HaKodesh? That's different. I just want to get the distinction.
The Aron HaKodesh is the ark.
Okay.
Within the tabernacle, in the Holy of Holies of the tabernacle.
Sort of like the sanctuary?
The tabernacle was the portable shrine
Okay.
that they carried, that they set up and broke down, set up and broke
The ark
down.
was inside.
And the ark was inside the Holy of Holies in the Mishkan, in the tabernacle. And it held the Luchot Abrit. It held the tablets of the covenant.
Amy, I don't know if you talked about this, but this use of the word ransom.
Kapara, again, this kaf pei resh business.
I think it's a bad choice of words.
It's what?
It's not a great choice of words if you're like saying you're paying for protection during this process.
So, no, it's a little different than protection. It is something stands in your place. It is ransom. When you ransom a captive, what happens? You give money, the physical person goes free and is not going to get tortured or made a slave or put in jail.
Right.
That's exactly what's happening. The sense of kapara is, it seems, that you give money and something that was supposed to happen to you doesn't. That's ransom. It stands in your place.
Okay.
Yes? So what does it mean that the sockets of the tabernacle, the thing that holds it all together,
is paid for by...
It is
It's not
expiatory, like it came from an expiatory experience. It's very interesting to me.
And you wonder if it was intended. I mean,
right? All these levels of, it's very interesting to me. So we have this. Oh, I put myself in the eye.
To make us talk about Shlogan Kabaras.
So the other thing that's important is that it is a unit of silver that everyone can afford. So in this sense, it is democratizing the Mishkan project. It is a public works project in that sense. Every Israelite knows that that portable shrine has something of their clan in it, holding it up, holding it together, right? That literally holding it together. That it is the democratizing of the offering that holds all of it together, right? I mean, that's where you have to go, okay, did they get that when they write this? Because that is gorgeous, right? So we have Nadiv Lev. We have people who can give more and people who don't. We have people who are artisans and they're going to give their skill and other people don't have that. Society's not equal. We know that. They knew that, right? The offerings we got before were Nadiv Lev, voluntary hearted offerings, right? Of whatever that was that you wanted to give. If I'm wealthy, I'm going to give a lot more than somebody else. But this, what holds it up, what keeps it standing, is the democratizing aspect of community. That everyone has to participate or it won't stand.
But just to clarify, it's not everyone, it's the Israelite men according to their army enrollment. Does that mean of a certain age?
Yeah.
So it's just men of a certain age here.
Yes, so democratizing to some extent.
Okay,
but remember, every family would have had one.
Right.
Right? You're talking about extended family units. We're not talking about the nuclear family, where I'm an empty nester. You know what I mean? And we're in our 80s, and so we don't have to give. It's extended clans where every clan would have had to give for every male that they had, 20 to whatever age.
Right.
I forget what the age cap is.
It doesn't say on here.
But somewhere else it's
50.
50?
Yeah.
Then you're in the reserves.
20, yeah.
Right.
It's very Reconstructionist.
It's very Reconstructionist, isn't it, Margot Morrison? It's very Reconstructionist.
There was a different kind of dues schedule.
A different kind of dues schedule.
And we pay, even if you have children in religious school, pay for religious. I mean, it was included in your membership, so that was taken care of by people who had the empty nesters.
So that the burden didn't fall on people, only the people with children, right? So this is standard dues, right? Actually, this is less than standard dues, because standard dues are hard for some people, right? You know, it seems that this was something that rich and poor alike could give. I mean, I have what it weighs, but I don't think that tells us what it is relative to its time. But if you're curious, it's 11.4 grams of silver for an average weight, the shekel weight. All right, so anyway, what were we just saying? So this kind of expiatory gift that makes the whole thing stand. All right, someone read at 17.
Adonai spoke to Moses, saying, "Make a laver of copper and a stand of copper for it, for washing, and place it between the tent of meeting and the altar. Put water in it, and let Aaron and his sons wash their hands and feet in water drawn from it. When they enter the tent of meeting, they shall wash with water that they may not die. or when they approach the altar to serve, to turn into smoke an offering by fire to Adonai, they shall wash their hands and feet that they may not die. It shall be a law for all time for them, for him and his offspring, throughout the ages.
Okay, so this is Exodus 30, verse 17, for those of you who just came in. So we are looking at the laver. What is a laver?
A wash basin.
A wash basin made out of,
Says copper.
says copper. Ruben's like, he knows better than to just answer. It's like, it says copper, but I know she's going to tell us something else. Copper, rage, copper.
Rabbi.
This is a quick group. That is very funny.
No, Rabbi, it's very important among Jews to have a source to wie steht es geschrieben, as they say in Yiddish. Where does it stand? Where does it say it is? Where is it written?
There you go.
Okay, I'm giving you my source here.
Okay, it is written that it is copper. So correct. So what does one do with a laver? What is this for? Why do you? Are they dirty?
Purifying.
For purification
Of the hands and feet.
of the hands, because they are,
They're special people.
and they're about. If they're using this laver, they are on their way to service into the altar. Right? They are
The priesthood.
The priests are on their way to service. So, avodah, right? So that means they have to be in a state of ritual purity. So hands and feet have to be washed. We see this still in Islam, right? And we also see it when you enter a Catholic church. Yes?
Well, also in Orthodox synagogues, when the Kohanim are blessing the congregation,
Duchanan.
they get washed.
At the Duchanan, the Leviim still wash the feet of the Kohanim. Correct. Before they take the bima to bless the people. Correct.
Well, Abraham washed the feet of the strangers that came to his tent.
So there are several different uses of washing in the ancient world. The one you're talking about, Abraham washing the feet of the guests, that is a ritual act of hospitality and welcome. So we see Abraham do it. We see it throughout. We see Jesus do it. Right? This is a sign of humility of the host.
The Pope,
The Pope, right?
presently,
Right?
There you go. It is
Washes his feet.
No.
one would hope.
The host washes the feet of the guest to offer hospitality. You have to remember you're talking about the ancient Near East, which if you've been in Israel and you've been anywhere near, these places, you know how dusty, how awfully dusty it is. When I lived in Beersheba, I could not believe 3 times a day you had to wash the floor, the tile floor, because it just is, it's everywhere. That very fine desert dust is everywhere. And so if you're talking about open shoes, travel was by foot, it's the nicest thing in the world, is that when you're done traveling and you're there to settle, that you clean your feet. So when the host does it, it's an act of humility, an act of making themselves, in a way, ritually less than their guest. That's one use. The other use in the ancient world is ritual purification. And just a second, Carol. There is a wide human. Remember, we've talked about terrestrial human culture, right? So kind of what's universally the human impulse. And water as a purifying agent, spiritually, ritually, seems to be part of terrestrial human culture. That there is this understanding that water being clean has lots of levels. And that mikvah, of course, mikvah is the most immersive experience of this. That surrounds you completely, and it's in lots and lots of cultures that we see. That it seems to be a human understanding that this is a transformative agent, water, not just physically washing stuff away, but that it's spiritually transformative. So that's what the priests here are doing, is preparing for serving at the altar. This is why in traditional Judaism, before you eat, you ritually wash, because we are now to understand that our table is the altar. There is no temple anymore. Our table is the altar, and we are to come to the altar with our hands ritually purified. So we wash in traditional practice before eating and before making motzi. Yes?
But isn't there the practical side of it to stop the spread of disease?
I don't know.
Did that come in?
I don't know that. I don't know.
I'd like to address that because we have done this. It's been often used against us when there's been plagues and the Jews have had less plagues because of the ritual mandated cleanliness, like before eating or waking up in the morning and washing our hands.
I just am not so convinced that cold water put on the hands is a great detergent. I don't know about you, but I've been told you have to sing happy birthday twice with soap and hot water to kill those germs. I'm not sure that a ritual...
Well, it doesn't hurt.
It doesn't hurt, for sure. But I think but the fact that what I think the way it's been used is there's a ritual and a bracha that they were saying that was deemed protective. That's right, that was deemed, and they didn't get sick. They have some magic that protects them when in fact they died too. The truth is they died, just like everybody else, but nobody wanted to deal with that. Yes, I see a hand. All right. So the laver. This is something that's going to ritually purify the priests for service. It is made of copper. Who attended a women's Seder where we talked about something made of copper? Oh, jeez.
Yeah. Yeah, we did that.
Yeah, we did, didn't we? We talked about this laver at the women's Passover Seder. We talked about this laver that is made out of the copper hand mirrors.
Yeah, this was a good one.
Of the women.
That was a good one.
Oh yeah.
Yes.
That was a great one.
That was 2 years ago, that's right.
2 years ago.
Yeah.
Was it 2 years ago?
Or 3 years ago, whatever it was.
Mirror.
And that the mirrors were not just to make sure that women looked sexy and then would have sex with their husbands.
Yes.
And then
So let's try to remember, Julie. Let's go into a little more detail. So women used the mirrors to beautify themselves, and then what would they do?
Procreate.
How? They went out into the fields where their husbands were sweaty and dirty and exhausted and tired.
Uh-huh.
And what would she do with the mirror?
Say, look how beautiful I am.
She would say, look how beautiful I am. I am more beautiful than you. And then he would take the mirror and say, oh no, I am more beautiful than you. And this game would go on, and they flirted, and then she would bring wine and fish, remember? And these women would bring wine and fish and play this little flirty game with their mirrors, and that led to sex, which led to the people procreating even under horribly oppressive circumstances. Aviva Zorenberg says these mirrors were used by the women to help the men rediscover their own beauty and their own sexuality, because Pharaoh had turned them into beasts of burden who were not interested in sex and who could not find their own joy and could not find their own pleasure and their own attractiveness under the grime and grit of slavery. But the women used the mirrors to flirt and to help them rediscover their own beauty and attractiveness. And in that, they became sexual beings again, not just slaves.
You learn all this at your Seder?
We did.
You see why we have hundreds of women at our Seder, Reuben. It was a good week after that here in the Palisades for the Jewish community. So why do I bring that midrash here? Right. So
because the laver is made of copper.
It's extraordinary to me that the midrash is that this laver, and we get it in the text too. Later we get in the text that it was made from the mirrors of the women. That we have in the Torah text. But the midrash about this flirting in the field business with the mirrors, how fantastic is it that we are from a tradition that says, what created the basin that would purify the priests for service? The mirrors that enabled these women to seduce their husbands. If there is not a greater piece of evidence for the fact, right, that we are a tradition that holds beauty and sexuality and pleasure and, right, for good purposes, holds that together with holiness, I don't know where there's a better piece of evidence.
Especially on Valentine's Day.
Especially on Valentine's Day. Yes. This idea that
It's so Jewish, Valentine.
it's so Jewish, right?
Saint Valentine.
You know, if you shake St. Valentine's tree hard enough, family tree hard enough, a Jew will fall out. So.
But it's amazing that what would purify the priests who are entering into service is so connected to what buoyed the emotions and the self-esteem of men.
Right.
I mean, it's really it's not even a reach.
Right?
It's
I mean,
right
for the
there.
rabbis, it's not even, I
even
agree,
a
I don't think
reach.
it's even a reach.
Yeah.
For them to write that midrash means they are reading all of that back into this laver. And that is fantastic for me.
But I mean, you could be the Scrooge and say, aha, they did not like these mirrors and what they were doing with them, so they made them give them up and use them for...
No, they were done with them. They weren't slaves anymore.
Yeah, they were done.
They're free. They're free people now.
Right.
It worked. They procreated. It worked. They're free. And now here are these mirrors. What should happen to them? Should they just be mirrors that sit on your table? God forbid. They're going to be made into a holy vessel that sanctifies the priests for service.
It's funny that Pharaoh was most afraid of the Jews procreating and overtaking the land, so obviously this mirror thing was working.
Exactly. Right.
That was the one thing that he was really afraid of.
Exactly.
Well, when we were in Italy, I saw how this idea spread. Rube and I was sitting down for dinner with the group, and there was a pole separating us. So Reuben said, "Can't we have another seat?" And the waiter said, "It's okay. You'll get to your room later."
It was Italy after all.
Right. And I was happy for them. And happy for us.
All right. Hopefully, Reuben, you showed up and made kapara for that dinner.
Do I have to put it in writing?
Where is it written?
Indeed not. All right. So let's go to. What time are we at?
10:20.
10:20.
Okay, so let's.
I have 10 o'clock.
I want to. I love Reuben. I want to skip over the creating of the incense. It goes into much detail about it.
And I don't think we're very good at math. So 500, wait, half as much, 250, just in case you didn't catch it.
There you go. So we're gonna skip that, and I want to go to chapter 31 because I want to make sure we get here, and often we don't. So someone read chapter 31 at the beginning, please.
Adonai spoke to Moses, "See, I have singled out by name Bezalel, son of Uri, son of Hur, of the tribe of Judah. I have endowed him with the divine spirit of skill, ability, and knowledge in every kind of craft, to make designs for works in gold, silver, and copper, to cut stones for setting, and to carve wood, to work in every kind of craft. Moreover, I have assigned to him Oholiab, son of Amisach, of the tribe of Dan, and I have also granted skill to all who are skillful. that they may know everything that I have commanded you, the tent of meeting, the ark for the pact, and the cover upon it, and all the furnishings of the tent, the table and its utensils, the pure lampstand and all its fittings, and the altar of incense, the altar of burnt offering and all its utensils, and the laver and its stand, the service vestments, the sacral vestments of Aaron the priest, and the vestments of his sons, for their service as priests, as well as the anointing oil and the aromatic incense for the sanctuary. Just as I have commanded you, they shall do.
Okay.
Wow, a lot of stuff.
That's a lot of stuff. So God says to Moshe, Re'eh, look here. Karati v'shem B'tzalel ben Uri ben Hur. I have called by name B'tzalel, son of Uri, son of Hur, Limate Yehuda, of the tribe of Yehuda. Ve'amaleoto ruach Elohim, and I have filled him with ruach Elohim. What is this? Spirit of God. B'chochma, in wisdom. Uvitvuna, with understanding. Uvada'at, and with knowledge. Remember, knowledge, this is to know as in the biblical sense to know, right? Intimacy. A knowledge that is a knowledge of intimacy, of knowing someone or something because you are intimately, right, experienced of it. Uvacho malacha, and of every form of malacha. Seems to imply the malacha that is required for the crafting of the things of the sanctuary, because that's what we get next, right? So what is the malacha? And then we get all this stuff that is what he's gifted at, right? So with working with gold and silver and copper or bronze, right? All means of dealing with stones, right? All the things that are going to be, all the skills, the talents that are going to be needed for making the stuff of the tabernacle. So, of course, the rabbis have to ask the question, so we talked about this before, right? We got this indicated last week or the week before that people, there was going to be somebody who was chokhmat lev, right? We talked about this chokhmah, this wisdom of the heart. Here we see that it's connected in this case somehow to talent.
It says here, they use the word skill where you're using the word wisdom.
Interesting.
I have endowed him with a divine spirit of skill.
Interesting.
And
yes.
And you're
so
wisdom there.
Yes, chokhmah is wisdom.
Yeah.
My guess is they're calling it skill because when you apply wisdom to craft, you're talking about a knowledge of the craft. You're talking probably about skill. I mean, I think
it says skill, ability, and knowledge.
Yeah, I think it's related. What I find interesting is that this is an acknowledgement, even at the time of, Torah text, that there is something different in the artist. Yes, there is a Ruach Elohim in artists that is different. So I want to take a look at a connection that I find fascinating between this idea of skill and knowledge in terms of a craft. So I'm giving you my notes where I made some connections. This is the gift of the ADD mind. I had been reading something and then connected it to this parsha, and I could not put my hands on the book. I'm not sure what's happened to it. But it's the book is called The Everyday Work of Art, and it's here in your notes, so you don't have to write that down. The Everyday Work of Art by Eric Booth. So go to the B'tzalel paragraph. Your third paragraph, yes? Betzalel means in the shadow of God, or in God's image. So the Ramban elaborates on what was so truly remarkable about Betzalel. First, while the Israelites knew only how to work with the brick and mortar that they had known in Egypt, Betzalel could create from silver and gold, could work with gemstones, carve wood, and weave colorful cloth. What's the point of that? Why is Ramban bringing that up?
There's something unique and unprecedented in Betzalel.
Because
he had no experience, or the Israelites would have had no experience with these things, only with bricks and mortar.
Okay, so Betzalel seems to have something that is not related to experience.
It's God-given.
It is related somehow to God, and it is not from having experienced it. Because where would they have experienced working with gold and silver and precious cloth in Egypt? Right? So what's Ramban's problem? Ramban's problem is, how can Betzalel be skilled in these things when they've just left Egypt, right? So Ramban's answer is because it is a God-given gift, an innate talent that Betzalel has. Secondly, says Ramban, he understood not only the material form the tabernacle vessels were supposed to take, but the essence and importance of their function. So he not only understood how to craft the items and what they would need to look like and what the technical things were going to be to be able to create that and cast that out of silver and gold or whatever, but he understood something in a different way than most people about how that was going to function in the life, right, in the ritual life of the people, that made his creation of them even more skilled. All right. So it seems that Betzalel has another way of looking at things, right, than normal people. It's not just a talent a skill he's learned. It seems to be a way of seeing the potential in things that the rest of us don't see. So very interesting that this guy, Eric Booth, who wrote this book, The Everyday Work of Art, says that the actions of art are driven by an energy that he calls yearning. The actions of art are driven by an energy he calls yearning. Talk to me about that. And he says we all engage in actions of art every day.
Well, to me, what it brings up is a yearning for an expression of something in your soul that just is driving to come out in one form or another.
And so he distinguishes that from longing. Longing, he says, is something I long for something specific. I long for that prom dress, let's just say. I yearn to appear at the dance beautiful and confident and free to dance.
No.
Do you see the difference?
No, I don't see the difference.
No.
Those are two things you just talked about. One is the prom dress and one is to dance at the prom.
So he says longing is for something specific.
Right.
Yearning is something deeper.
Yearning is a hunger.
A hunger.
Yearning is a hunger.
That the longing is for the dress.
Right.
Yearning is about, what does that mean? I show up in the dress powerful, confident, free, right? Ready to, be out there in the world. So that's the longing is for the dress. The yearning is for what beyond that. The hunger, the spiritual, soulful yearning is about something so much bigger than longing. So I don't want to harp on it. I just want to bring it up because we tend to be very uncomfortable with longing, don't we? We see it as an emptiness. We see it as something's missing. And if I just had enough money to buy that Mercedes, I could answer that thing in there that is unsatisfied. We live in a culture that constantly sells us things by telling us that yearning needs to be satisfied and taken care of. You can't have
Or can be satisfied
and taken care of with a material object.
Something can be satisfied, but it's not the yearning.
Correct.
The yearning is something that's just always going to be there.
Exactly. So, right. So then look down where it says, this is what I believe the real teaching of Bezalel is, right? So here's the connection I made between this book that I was reading and this Parsha, is that he had the gift of an ability to follow and keep alive his sense of yearning. And this always leads to actions of art in every moment of every situation we encounter, right? This is Eric Booth's argument, is when we stay in touch with yearning, we engage in actions of art in our own lives. That the action of art is really the action of showing up differently, being fully present. And this is beautiful what he does. He says, where is it? So he says, when we really respond to life, when we really respond, and he pulls that word apart, as you see, from re and, right, pondere, right? When you put those together, it's re means to do something again, right? And this respond part is about promise. The root of this respond is promise. Spouse, right? We get spouse, sponsor, right? From spondere. Re-spondere, to re-promise, to recommit. So what he says is what is a response to life? When we really respond to the moment, to the call, to a person, we're being so present and so there and so open and so in touch with yearning and really, really following that yearning to a place where we can experience a person or a moment or the beauty or the sadness or the whatever of something, and out of that fullness of experience, make a promise back with our lives. Even just in that moment. That's what responding means. Re-promising. Showing up enough to be impacted enough to then make a promise back.
Rabbi, can I ask just the two sentences above where you are now, where it talks about his gift was an ability. Who was the he in this case?
Bezalel. I'm making the connection to Bezalel. That this spirit of God that is in Bezalel is this ability to the artist in him that is in every one of us. I think that's what compelled me about Booth's piece that I was reading at the same time was, we are all Bezalel. If we'll go there, if we will allow ourselves to yearn and to follow the hunger, where is it calling me? Right? We hide from it. We shut it off. We anesthetize. We buy something because it makes us itchy. This yearning, right? We don't like it in the West. And what he's saying is, this is the only way to make art of our lives, is to follow the yearning, to show up to it, to listen to what it's calling us into. And that when we do that, we make a work of art of our lives. And he's beautifully articulate about it. You can go on Google, find the book on Amazon, and search inside the book for these phrases that you see me, that I quote. Because I realize, you've got the beginning of a paragraph, all of us, and then, of course, it's not here. But if you even just put all of us, search inside this book and put all of us, you'll find the paragraph. I did it last night. But you can't print it, so I couldn't bring it to you. But look at what look at what he says. Booth writes. Julie, read it for us. What it says, Booth writes.
Booth writes
on the back.
Booth writes on the back. We complain of a lack of responsibility among people today, particularly among the young. If we attend to the basics, we see that the real deficiency is the ability to respond, that is, to notice well and to make and keep a personal commitment back. This is the kind of responsibility we need in the nation. the skill to create small personal connections to new things and to be committed enough to honor them with a promise back, a promise we keep.
So, I guess I agree.
I agree too.
That we talk about a lack, of responsibility. And what he's saying is that's right. That's what we have. We have created a culture and then people impacted by that culture that has taken from them their knowledge of responsibility, their ability to really experience something, to be completely open to it, to something new, to something wondrous, to something beautiful, and then to make a promise back and keep it.
It's so great to think that you can teach the two different kinds of the yearning, the difference between yearning and longing, or the difference between desire for a thing and desire for a much, something intangible.
Connection.
Yeah, to make a personal small connection. That's that's great.
I would say longing versus yearning. Longing doesn't necessarily always have to be a material thing. You can long for things that are not material, but there's something about the word longing that implies scarcity. It comes from a place of anxiety.
Yeah, it comes from a place of depression.
Or absence of.
Absence of, as opposed to yearning seems to me like wanting something for the future. You could yearn for a beautiful painting or yearn for world peace, right? It doesn't have to be about something that's missing that you're replacing. It could be something that's of the future.
Potential.
Yeah, yearning seems much more out in the future, where longing is more tangible.
I mean, or not, but just the point is that there's two different kinds of, or not two, but however many we're talking about.
But also that to have conviction does kind of start with yearning, and sometimes we ignore the yearning, and I think that's true. Young kids today, they just don't have enough conviction. I think that's what he's trying to say, and they're always apologizing for what they're about to say, kind of thing. You see it even in, I don't need to sound like an old crotchety person.
But because we haven't done a very good job of teaching them. We've done a great job of teaching them to achieve. Right? We've done a great job of teaching them to compete. We've not done a great job of teaching them to yearn.
Yeah.
Blanche?
When I retired and I reached the age of 72, I started painting. And I went for color. And I created a messy studio because my kids had left the house, and I took one of the bedrooms. And I didn't have to have anything perfect. And I worked with Diane Heino.
Mm-hmm.
She put a notice in the bulletin or somewhere that I saw. So for 5 years, I went to her house on Tuesdays for 3 hours, and I worked with her and a group of women in her garage. And she was just the teacher for me. She let me be. And then she would come over and say, I like what you're doing here. Keep it up. And I was willing to work that way. And so I developed my own way of painting.
So as a painter and a poet, talk to me about yearning.
I was yearning to create a place for myself where I was alone and peaceful, and where I could let my thoughts, my yearnings go anywhere. And I did. It's interesting that I started out painting rabbis.
Well, of course.
Nose.
Excellent.
with a painting of my granddaughter, Ariel. But I never knew. Ariel said to me one day, she's 18 now, Grandma, stop painting women. So all I did was paint women for a while, having babies and all kinds of things. So I started on abstracts. It's a good suggestion.
So your original yearning, it sounds to me like the original yearning that you were in touch with was for a state of being for yourself, right? It wasn't about the product. It was about a state, right? And this is critical, I think, to what he's saying about this. The state that we're in is what enables us to create all kinds of art in our lives, whether it's literally art or to make art of our lives. What we do here is
This
art.
paragraph, she's basically saying this paragraph.
Read it.
Where it says, she's essentially responding to herself, engaging with herself. That's that
idea of
repromising.
Repromising.
You said, I want to engage with I want to find what I'm.
And let your yearnings go wherever they would, right? And what you started to paint was your own experience.
Yes.
You were painting women. You were painting your own experience. Like this is the gorgeousness. We don't know what's going to show up on the canvas of our lives. We have no idea. When we really respond, wow, we don't know what's going to show up. And that, I think we've crushed that gorgeousness. Like we are so in control all the time. We want so much to control where it's going and what happens at the end that we've lost the ability to just show up and follow our yearnings and then see what we create. And that when we get out of the way, right, amazing things can come into the world through us as creative agents, but only when we get out of the way and allow the yearning to be, the emptiness, the ache of that to be what guides us.
I just wanted to say, when you were saying that, the thing I thought of was perfectionism, and how it's such a devil in our lives today, because everything we see in the media, and I think young kids coming up, it's hard to go with your yearning to a place that you don't know where it's going to lead you, because it's scary. And what if it ends up not being perfect, right? And there's such a people almost need a guarantee it's going to be okay before they even get into it.
I think you're so right. I think it's really hard on our kids and on us. And perfectionism also then prevents us from saying, I'm sorry. Because I see that too, that, on the one hand, we're afraid to do anything because what if it's not perfect? On the other, it means we can't ever say I'm not perfect. We have a really hard time saying I messed up and I'm sorry.
We can't really blame our kids because if they saw us yearning, they might have 100%.
We created the culture that formed them. 100%. It is on us.
It's a dance too. I'm so sorry. You go ahead. It's just a dance between the two, and they both exist, and you can do both. You can teach your kid to be as competitive as they want, as they can be, and to try to do as well as they can do, but to remember that there's a blank canvas in their lives, and they are to fill it the way to follow their bliss, to follow their yearning, to follow that hunger. Who knows what's going to happen here?
And the connection. Thank you, Julie.
For
setting that up. The connection is that there's a ratio, 6-1. The ratio is 6-1, people. That's the magic ratio according to our tradition. Malacha, the competition, the homework, all the things that they need to do to be productive in the world. Fine, we get it. That's okay. And one day out of 7 is about yearning. 1 day out of 7 is about the practice of the empty space at the center of the Mishkan.
Oh God, if we only gave ourselves the.
If we gave ourselves 1 out of 7 wholly and fully committed.
Or if we re-promised ourselves.
To not doing, but to being present. And to figuring out then what is the promise I make in response, the world would look different.
You could almost say that without yearning, we wouldn't have art. We wouldn't have the ability to create something that didn't exist before.
Right? So that the
culture.
Go to the second page, the back of the page I just handed you. And there's a sentence that starts maybe a quarters down the page, no matter how elegant the facility. You see it? Mm-hmm. No matter how elegant the facility, regardless of how expensive its upkeep, there is simply no substitute for human involvement. Our presence is necessary to give our institutions life, and our involvement is necessary to preserve the ancient and wonderful way of life that Judaism provides the world. Judaism understood from the start that holy space without holy time was a mockery of true religion. That's why the pinnacle of creation is Shabbat. 6 days were spent creating a place, the world and all it contains, in which holiness could be made real. But the fulfillment of the promise of place moves us beyond the tangible into the realm of time. The point then is that even a religion as profound and as joyous as Judaism cannot hope to transform our lives, let alone the world, if we will not invest the time necessary to let it work its wonders on our hearts.
How does a rabbi do that when you're working Friday night and Saturday morning and Saturday afternoon?
I'm sorry, does someone else have a question?
Let alone soccer practice and, the sleepovers and, okay, this week, okay.
For me, it's about Monday. That Monday is Shabbat, and it is sanctified. It is sacred. And unless there is an SUV that rolls over, and I got to get to the ICU, I don't do anything. I really, really, really don't have meetings. I really don't make commitments. And that's my, like Sunday night, I'm like, it's Erev Shabbos. Right? I'm like, whoop, whoop. I do a little dance. Like, I love, everyone else hates Sunday night, right? And I'm just like,
So you can set aside whatever space you set aside.
because the kid goes to school, Judy's retired. So, Sunday night to Monday at 3 o'clock when that kid's out of school, and actually we hire a sitter to pick her up at 3 and we go out to dinner. Nice. So that we really have that time, because it's, you have to have Shabbat.
You have to have it with your kid too.
So that's the challenge. That's the challenge, right? Having Shabbat with her is much more of a challenge. And in that sense, I don't have Shabbat with a community, which is also sometimes a challenge. But I get to do Shabbat in certain ways with this community. Like Friday mornings for me are a fantastically rich experience of exactly what we're talking about. The artistry and the gorgeousness of what we do here together, and the way that shifts me out of the grind and the thinking and the planning and the worrying and the whatever. And then this is followed by our meditation class.
And it is true that I always feel like I never know what I'm going to get out of this hour. I know that there's going to be something, and I don't know whether it goes, if you call it going sideways or not, but it's that unpainted canvas.
It's the absolute emblematic of what everything we're talking about here is this Torah study, the fact that humans come in to be engaged. We don't know what's going to happen. We have no control over what's going to happen, and yet
something happens, right? And I have no idea either.
The best is when the canvas goes in a direction of really learning about the others in here and the lives that they have, and the generational, there's not a generational divide, even though we have multi-generations in here. That canvas is so clean, and it's so neat when it goes in that direction that you can leave and be imparted by, other people's campuses.
And I was talking to a bar mitzvah student yesterday, and we were talking about elders, and he said, I don't know any old people except my grandparents. Like we were talking about, and I said, it is a really serious problem in our culture. I said, and it's one of the reasons I love KI. It's one of the few places left where when you come in here, it isn't a generational divide. Now, there are generational experiences, but it's one of the few places that we talk across the generations still. And I find that to be one of the most critical components of what it means to have this place, right? Is that we cross-pollinate. We have the talking across the generations and the sharing across the generations that is so important and special and doesn't happen for us organically just about anywhere else.
And I don't know why I was so surprised about that when I started coming here, because I had a really unique relationship with my granny. And, while a lot of people, spending time with their grandparents is a chore, it was never a chore for me, ever. It was like I really loved it. And the generation, like the imparting of knowledge and all that stuff, and just the uniqueness.
And we don't get it anymore.
Yeah, so I don't even know why that was surprising to me, but I was like, oh my gosh, this is the best part of my life.
And the other thing I want to say about what you said about learning from people in the room is there's this wonderful, Peter Pitzela talks about, and when he does bibliodrama, he says, when we read the text for us is always a mirror, right? Whatever we confront Torah, it's always different for us. That's why we can do this every single year. And as Rabbi Rubin likes to point out, we've been doing it for 3,000 years. We take that book out every week. We take that scroll out every week. How can we still read something 3,000 years later? Because it's a mirror. We're always different. What we see is always based on our experience. But Peter Pitzela says, what to me is a mirror, to you is a window. When we share what we see in the text, what we see in our mirror, what we provide for someone else is a window into that text that wouldn't be there without. And it's, to me, that is exactly it. That's the beauty of what we do here. Is for me, I can only be a mirror, but when you talk, now it's a window.
In my generation, in the ancient days, it was not uncommon for 3 generations to live in one house.
Right. That's right. And people grew up knowing their grandparents intimately in terms of just casual conversation, right? They interacted naturally together, and it's a serious place of poverty for us. Paula.
On the other hand, I think, particularly in the Jewish community, there's been on many occasions since the 1900s a cutting off of generations, where there was a cutting off of grandparents, a cutting off because of the Holocaust, because of immigration in the early 1900s, because of pogroms, where people, and so I know I can say that for my family, that my parents sort of didn't know how to have an older generation.
Interesting.
And so sad. We don't have a history of generations, and because we didn't learn it in our families because there was a cutoff.
Interesting.
And so this is something that affects many families too. You were lucky that you had.
I have to tell you, I know how lucky I am because I'm married to someone who never had grandparents, and I don't say this to him, but I always go like, oh, that's so sad, that you had never had that experience. And for those that are grandparents here, I am telling you, you will make a mark if you take the time to spend with your grandchild, because it is a relationship that it's indescribable how I feel about my granny. I mean, it's like, and then how I know she felt about me. And I mean, she died right after 9/11. And I was very, very sad, but I had her for 36 years. And I just, it's a gift.
Well,
it's a major gift.
And I really want to be clear that you don't have to have been given biological grandparents to answer exactly that cutoff.
Spend time with any
cultivating relationships of intention and choice are the answer to what you're talking about, and to David's, not having had that. That I really want us to create those relationships intentionally. We create them in this room.
You should create them for your kid if your parents aren't around, to have someone of another generation, because the gift is just, it's priceless. It's priceless. And I hope all the grandparents here really know what they're imparting.
You've been listening to Rabbi Amy Bernstein's Friday morning Torah study from Kehillat Israel in Pacific Palisades, California. For more information, go to our website, www.ourki.org.